The Windows operating system makes use of a number of system services that run behind the scenes. These services handle all sorts of different tasks that are fundamental to the operating system. For example, the encrypting file service depends on a system service. Likewise, the DNS client depends on a system service, and there are any number of other functions that are tied to system services. The flip side of this is that if one of these system services were to stop, then the functionality that's tied to that service will come to a grinding halt as well. So sometimes when you have a malfunction within Windows, it could be because the underlying service that corresponds to that function has stopped. So how do you take a look at these services, and how do you know if a critical service has stopped? Well, to do that you'll use a built-in tool called the Service Control Manager. To access the Service Control Manager, what you need to do is right-click on the Start button, and then go to Run, and type services.msc, and click OK. And that's going to launch the Service Control Manager, which you can see right here. So as you look at the screen, you can see that we have a lot of information. Each one of these rows corresponds to an individual system service. And for each one of these services, the console displays the service's name. It displays a description of the service. Then there's a column with the status, and the status column indicates whether or not the service is running. Now, a moment ago I mentioned that it's really important for system services to be running. And yet, as you look at this console, you'll notice that the status column only displays a status of running for some of the services, but not others. For example, right here we have a great big gap where these services aren't running. Now, why is that? If you look at the startup type, you'll notice that some services are set to start manually. Other services are set to start automatically. As a general rule, any service that has a startup type of automatic should display a status of running. Now, there are some exceptions because there are some situations where Windows will start a service automatically and then realize that that service isn't really being used at the moment, and it will shut that service down as a way of saving some system resources. But this tends to be the exception rather than the rule. By and large, services that start automatically should be running. So what do you do if there's a service that's set to start automatically and it's not running? Well, what you can do is tell the Service Control Manager to start the service. So let's take a look at how to do that. So I'm not going to shut down a critical system service because that might cause this virtual machine to crash and ruin the video that you're watching right now. I want to take a look at a service that's set to start manually. I'm going to use the Background Intelligent Transfer Service. That's used for downloading content from the internet. So I am click on the service and you can see that the startup type is set to manual. And then we have these buttons down here: Start, Stop, Pause, and Resume. So if we wanted to start the service, we could simply click the Start button and Windows will attempt to start the service, and I'll click OK, and now we can see that the service is running. Likewise, if I want to stop this service, I can simply double-click on the service and then click the Stop button and Windows will stop the service. Now typically there's not going to be a need to change the startup type for a service, but if you want to change the startup type, you can use this drop-down and choose a new startup type. So if, for example, I wanted this particular service to start automatically, then I could change the startup type to automatic and click OK, and then you can see that the startup type has changed from manual to automatic. And then if I wanted to start the service, I could either reboot the machine and it should start automatically because we've changed the startup type, or I could click the Start button and Windows starts the service. So that's how you use the Service Control Manager to start system services.